Well, hey there, everybody. So today we're going to go through Chapter 2, and I'm going to first kind of generically flip through these pages and talk about anything we need to talk about. But we're going to draw this one kind of step by step, just in case you're not having any luck doing it yourself. So, first of all, it breaks down where everything is in Inventor. If I were to go ahead and open up a new drawing, oops, I chose the wrong one, but that's okay. You would see these same areas that it's showing here. I'm going to close this since I opened the sheet metal part and open up a standard one instead. But anyways, so we'll keep on going, and then it talks about the plane locations, but I've made another video for that, so I'm not going to waste too much time on it. And so it wants us to make a rough sketch, and it talks about implied constraints that happen when you're drawing. By default, you've got like these constraints you're doing, but it'll actually, if you see right there, it's saying when you draw this horizontal line, it's actually going to show this constraint that it's actually putting in there automatically. So what they're saying here is more or less draw going around and make sure that your lines are actually horizontal, vertical, and everything's perpendicular to each other. So I'm just going to draw a rough profile, and I'm going to use the XY plane. And make sure your view cube does say front to confirm that. And it shows us drawing it roughly around here, so make sure you've got that little symbol that it shows like right there when I'm not moving my mouse. And just finish it up doing the same. You'll see a perpendicular symbol, and then this last one, if you notice from here, it's showing a dotted line. Just keep on moving until you've got the perpendicular symbol, the dotted line showing, and then you can close it out. Okay, and then it's going to have us put a dimension there, and I'm going to jump ahead and just slap them all in at once. I'm going to flip through here a little bit and see if I can't just find, yeah, this. So we'll put them in just like they did, and then you can actually edit them as you go. What's cool about Inventor is, you don't have to worry about drawing something perfectly located. You can modify it later. So I can set this to 0.75, and it's starting to look goofy, so I'll change the overalls to 2.5 and change this one to 0.75. And just like that, we have the same dimensions as this one, but much larger than we actually drew it. So then we have an extrusion, and you can actually, instead of leaving the sketch and then hitting extrude, you can actually just do it while in the sketch. And usually by doing that, it'll automatically select that region, and it saves you a little bit of time doing it here. So we'll extrude at 2.5, and then you have these options to choose direction. As you can see, it shows which ways it's going, but they want you to do the first one, the default. And then it shows kind of some of the ways to navigate, which I have a video on that as well, so I'm not going to talk too much about. But assuming you're reading through this is all crucial information, so I hope you are reading through it. And after a long detour, it finally shows step 4.1 to select the top of this face and start a sketch. So I'm going to hit Start 2D Sketch, choose that top face, and then notice up here, this is a common problem on Inventor, and it drives me crazy, but make sure that top shows left to right like that. If it doesn't, when you hover over the cube, there's these little arrows. You can just hit them to rotate at 90 degrees, but make sure it shows like this. Okay, so now what it wants is for us to draw this profile here. Oh, well, I hit the wrong button, so disregard that. I'm going to rotate it back, and I'm going to draw our profile. Same deal, make sure all your lines are vertical and horizontal. Make sure that these guys end at the same point. And then it looks like we'll dimension it. Kind of guessing on the sizes, but let's double check. Yep, it's the exact same size as the other sketch, in case you guys were wondering. Okay, so now what it's showing is you put these dimensions in here to locate it to the profile. What the book failed to mention, though, and I've come across this because students have asked me, but they try to dimension from here to here and they have issues. For me, I don't, but if you are having issues, the solution is a simple one. If you notice, when I choose a dimension on these edges, they turn yellow. If you're having problems pulling a dimension for whatever reason, choose Project Geometry, and what you're going to do is choose the space, and when you choose it, all those lines will go yellow. So then, you know, there's an actually selectable edge there, because before, like, you can select it, but there's no line. Basically what that means when that yellow line is there is that yellow line comes from an existing feature, and that is now in your sketch. Because right now, although you see this big gray blob, it doesn't exist in the sketch. But since, you know, I can work with these values, I'm just going to choose the edges that are there, choose 0 to align it, and then I'll do the same here. And it's going to make those yellow lines for me, so that's cool. The way the book does it, though, it's basically trying to teach you how to make things adjustable. So in this case, you know, you have the two sketches, it's located, it all turns constrained. We'll talk more about that later, but they just want you to be able to dynamically adjust the model, and that's what they're going for there with the 0, 0 trick. So then it has us extrude it 2.5 down, and if you notice, we'll have to flip our direction. And just a cool tip, you could actually also choose 2 and then choose the bottom of this space here, and it would actually constrain it in place in line with this edge. But as you know, they don't want to throw too much on you, so they start with just giving a simple number. And then we're going to add a little cut feature. So it looks like we'll have a circle, and I'm going to choose a new sketch on this face. And same deal, you're just going to let it project the geometry for you, and if it doesn't, you can always project the face. So it's going to be 0.75, 1.25, and 0.75. So now we'll do an extruded cut. So by default, it's selected that hole. I'm just going to choose in the Boolean section, instead of join, which is what we've used in the past and you haven't even noticed, you can also remove. So I'm going to hit cut, and what that'll do is it'll actually cut through it. So, and then I like to be a stickler and always choose through all, just because it will cut through whatever's there. You don't have to give a number, but I believe the book probably does give you a value. Let's see. Oh, it chose through all. Cool. Okay. So there we have that. And then next we're going to draw a chamfer, more or less. They just want to have it manually drawn because it's good practice. So we'll start a sketch on this face. And on this one, I would actually project the edges ahead of time. It's a little easier. And honestly, the way it shows you draw this, I think is much more difficult to mess with. But that's only because sometimes your lines may act kind of difficult. In my opinion, it's actually easier to draw a triangle out in space and then constrain it using a collinear, which means that this line and this line will be in line, and then do the same here. And that's fine, you know, like it is easier, but for the sake of this exercise, we will draw it like the book. So I'm just going to draw a line. And see, this is one of the things I hate, because look at that, you've got to start a new point because it decided to stop it. It just doesn't act too great when you're already drawing on top of geometry. I always try to avoid it where possible. But you know, you got to learn to walk before you can run, so we won't go too crazy. So then we've got our 45 dimension there, and it's constrained. So I believe this is going to be a cut just through this portion, and it is. Let's see, so we'll do cut, and we'll try to match what they do. 2 next, cool, okay. So you can hit 2 next, and what it does is it'll extrude all the way up to that face. It doesn't go through it, it just goes up to it. So anything that would have been in the middle would have been cut. And yeah, that's pretty much it for that one, I think. Yeah, okay. So now let's jump to the end of chapter exercises. I'm going to start a new standard English part. And yeah, let's go ahead and draw it. So I'm going to do this a little different just because I'm a big fan of constraining, and you all should be too with time. I'm just going to draw the rough shape of it, and we'll fit it into place as we go. So I'm just going to kind of look at it and ballpark what it looks like here. I know that this edge ends in line with that one. And then I guess it's got a cutout. Yep. Notice I'm still trying to keep everything where they end in the same place where needed. Okay. So we also have a giant circle. So what I want to do is choose the largest dimension, which is 3, and I'm going to dimension it first, and I'm actually going to change the value. The perk of doing this, the first dimension scales the drawing. So if I change this, it keeps the same ratios everywhere, but it actually resizes it to the right portion for that one dimension. So this helps a lot in not like blowing up a drawing by trying to do too much at once. And I advise dimensioning the lines more than the points. I don't know if you noticed, I actually did a point and I undid it because, you know, if you grab a point, it actually leaves more room for the dimensions to not be fully defined. In a case like this, I don't have a choice, but try to be conscious of what you're actually clicking. So I'm going to click the line here instead of point to point. And yeah, I'm basically just going to go through and slap in all these values. So we got 1.5 here. And the circle itself is 1. It's also 1 to here. Naturally, it's 1 here as well. Well, that may be it. Okay, so now, if you're actually paying attention, down here there's always some information. And if you see it says 2 dimensions needed still. What that is saying is if I were to grab a point anywhere on this one of these points and pull, click and pull, the sketch moves. I can let it go. You know, I can also grab another point, and everything seems to stay together. So what it's saying more or less is this sketch here is not located in reference to this yellow point, which is the center point. It is the point where all of these planes actually meet, and if you see I'm hovering, you can kind of see the axes and the planes where they all come across the same point. Starting out, you know, it's fine just to do like a corner or something. Just have a part of the sketch touching this point. You know, later on you'll have parts centered upon it. But for now, I'm just going to choose this circle, and I'm going to choose to make it touch that. So if you notice now, fully constrained, the lines went black. We have located everything for the sketch. But how did I do that? I grabbed this point and I hovered over the yellow. And if you notice, a little green dot appears. That's actually implying a constraint just by doing that. If you're not doing that too well, you can just do coincident up here on the constraint panel and choose the center point to the center point. And that'll do it. So now we need to extrude it a thickness of 0.5, and I would advise doing symmetric always. There are cases where you wouldn't want to do that, but it's nice to get in the habit of doing it the right way. So next we'll do spacer plate. We're going to keep the same kind of approach, and I will just draw this rough shape and then we'll finish it out. I'm kind of guessing on the memory of it. Let's see how accurate I was. Yeah, not bad. Okay. So we have a big circle and a little circle. And it appears to be 8 wide. So this is going to scale quite a bit. But again, make sure you do that first dimension as an overall, and you'll be fine. I think the cool part about Inventor is, you don't have to worry about making mistakes, because you can make a gigantic error and fix it with minimal effort, just like this. You know, like in AutoCAD, if I would have drawn it so small, it would have been a full redo. But Inventor's got a lot of flexibility. Mad respect. Okay, so we're starting to get somewhere. Let's see, what else are we missing? Well, this is a good time to worry about constraining. So if I pull, do you see this? That line moves around. So that's the easiest way to tell. And that's the reason for these things about being fully constrained everywhere, is it's trying to tell you what you need to finish your part. So if I grab this edge or the points on it, you'll see it moves freely, which means I'm missing this 2.5 dimension. Another way to tell, though, I'm going to go ahead and constrain to the origin. That way we don't have a flailing part again. I'm going to put this center point there, and now you can see everything is black except for this one blue line. So the reason to tie it to your origin, if nothing else, is to help you draw it properly. So I can tell just by looking, oh, this blue line, it needs something. So now I'm just going to go ahead and add it. And it's going to be a thickness of 0.125. So we can go ahead and jump to the next one. We've got the positioning stop. Same deal. We'll draw on the front plane, aka the XY. And this one will go a little bit faster. Okay, so what we have is an overall 4. And for me, I would like to make this part centered. So what I'm going to do is choose coincident this time. And if you notice, like if I hover, everything has a green selection. But if I go to the middle of this line, and you may not know where it is, you can just mouse across till you see a little green dot appear. I'm going to choose it, and I'll choose the origin. So now the part is partially black. You can kind of see, you know, like we've got to adjust the top more or less. So we'll do the overall height of 1.75. We need holes. I forgot about the holes. All right, and the holes are 0.75. From the edges, and 0.5 in size. And you know, you could dimension it twice and do 0.5, or if you want to go ahead and get a head start on what would be a forever thing, you can go to this constraint panel and choose the sign that looks like an equal sign. And it actually is the equal constraint. And you can choose to make these two circles equal each other. So now you've got less drawing dimensions clogging up the area. It makes it easier to tell what's going on. So it's advisable to start using constraints early. So feel free to put in that equal constraint there. So now we've got 1.25 up top, 1.25 to this guy. You'll notice my dimensions kind of shift around. That's why I don't worry about making them too pretty at first, because you usually have to manually move them anyways. And that's okay. I did a wrong dimension earlier though. This is actually 1.75 here. And if you notice, we had a little problem. All you got to do is just pick it up and move it. That was because of, you know, my bad dimension earlier. But if you notice, like there's two separate lines, the green ones, so I can just grab that point and pull. And then this was 2.5, I believe. Yep. Okay. So you may be thinking to yourself, what the heck? What else are we missing here? If I grab these points You know, we've got quite a bit of blue, but it's hard to say what's going on because it's moving horizontal, but you don't see a value given here. So there's a couple ways to solve this. One is to obviously take 4 and subtract 1.25 from it and divide it by 2, and that says this width and this width for you is that value. Another way, the smarter way, is to say that this line equals this line. And what that does is it keeps them similar in shape. So the only thing you'll need then is to say that this outside line equals that outside line. And suddenly, with zero math, zero effort, you have everything besides the circle located. And the same deal for this. It doesn't give you a value because it's implied that it's in the center. So all I need to do, unfortunately, you know, you dive into constraints a little sooner than you probably wanted to, but you have to do a vertical constraint. So I choose the center point, and if you notice, there's a vertical line that appears, and it's saying, you know, this is the direction it's going. So make sure it shows vertical, obviously. And then I'm going to choose that center point from earlier. So now we have our fully defined sketch, and we're going to do an extrusion of 0.25. Okay, so now is the guide block. This one's a little harder, but not too bad, in all honesty. I think it looks harder than it actually is. I'm going to actually start my sketch on this point this time. Instead of trying to draw around and move it later, let's try to knock a few things out at once, shall we? So we've got this really sharp point, and then it kind of does another little slant, and then we get into this kind of more traditional shape like this. And I'm just going to close it out. And then we have a circle as well. So the width is 3.75. And sometimes it doesn't scale properly, as you see. That's okay. I'm just going to pull it into a decent, not really great look. You know, you just grab things and pull. That's all you got to do. So I can move the lines. I can grab a point, position it upwards more. That way it doesn't jump around too much when the time comes. We'll give it an overall height of 1.75. That's okay. Don't worry about it flailing around too much for now. It'll work itself out when you start putting in all these values. I did that from the wrong spot. Don't do that. Okay, so it was from here to here is 25. It's 1.5 from here to here. And we've got 0.75. Okay, so now to do a little shopkeeping, just go ahead and move your dimensions around, make them look better if yours look as bad as mine. You know, you want this to be legible if you have to open it up and ever use it, so it's always good to try to be tidy. And you know, some people leave them on a model. I hate dimensions on a model with a passion, so I try to minimize that where needed, or where possible, I should say. So now we're going to extrude it 1.5. Okay, and then we're going to do a sketch on the top face. And what I'm going to do is just choose this rectangle option. If you notice, it has 2 blue dots. That's saying all I got to do is choose a top point and a bottom point, and then the rest will just kind of make it happen. So I'm going to add in that dimension of 0.25 using one of these edges that it'll automatically project. Do the same over here. And then for this portion, I'm going to use a collinear again. You know, this is going to be one of your best constraints to use where possible. It's really easy to remove, really easy to add, hard to beat. Okay, now I'm going to give you guys a pro tip. hit this little drop down up here, click that, and make sure that you have clicked measure. If measure is not on, you won't see this little measuring tool. But the easiest way, if you don't remember what you drew, which in my case is mine, let me make this a little bigger. Okay, so like say I click the measuring tool, I click a face, and then I click another face, and it gives me the height for it. So what I know is it's 0.25 right there. So it's 1.75 overall height minus 0.25. That's how deep I need to cut. So that's 1.5. And then a cool thing to do is to click that face again and this one to ensure that we have that 0.25 that we have. So yeah, that one's actually not as hard as it looks. It seems much more difficult than it actually is once you get into it. So next up we've got the slider block. And same deal, I'm just going to start my point on there and we'll just see where this goes. So we've got like a little slant. You got to be careful when you're drawing this. It will try to imply perpendicular constraints. So if you kind of miss the mark, you may end up messing yourself up. You know, if that happens, you're kind of pretty early on. So I wouldn't go trying to, you know, fix the constraints. It would probably just be easier to delete the lines and re-add them, putting the proper values in. So keep that in mind. And unfortunately, this one didn't scale either. Sometimes it happens. It's all about how goofy the shape is, you know. And this one's pretty wonky as far as they go. Okay, so now this line here, if I click the dimension and pull, it does this, you know, a height or a width. But if you look, this dimension is parallel to that actual edge. So to do that, there's a little trick. You click the line, and you see right now before I click it, there's this like arrow little deal, and it shows like a width symbol. But now, if I leave my mouse on it, you can see this separate one. So what this is saying is it's not horizontal or vertical. If I click, it'll become aligned. And that's what you're needing here is an aligned dimension. So make sure you've got that. And then we're going to do the same deal over here. Slap in our angle of 60. We got an angle of 60 here as well. Okay, now we've just got these tiny little circles to deal with. Let's make them a little bigger, just so it's easier to grab. And we've got 1 and 0.5. Somehow that one was perfectly 0.5. Okay, so there's that guy. And let's extrude it. The value is 0.25. This one's always tricked me out because it has such a goofy shape. When it's looking at an ISO view, it almost looks wrong sometimes, but it's just goofy. It's just a goofy part. That's our boy. Okay, so next up and last one, I believe, is the coupler. The coupler is kind of intense for a first go. What you're wanting to do, there's multiple ways, but the easiest way is to do a revolve. So we're going to draw like from this center line up, we're going to draw that in a side view. So we're going to draw on this right side, which is, well, I don't see a plane name, but we've been doing this view, or this plane. We're going to do this one. And I'm still going to draw the rough shape. So what I'm going to do is draw like all the hatched area and nothing else. So I'm just going to give a decent. And I did not draw the line straight. I'll show y'all what to do when that happens. How about that? So if that happens, just go ahead and slap in a perpendicular constraint. That's all you got to do. So now it's, you know, where it should be, and you keep on drawing. You could also delete it. It's up to you. Okay, so we've got this. All right, so here's the fun stuff. So what I'm going to do is draw a line right here, and this is actually going to be our center line. So I'm going to click it and choose center line. At the same time, I'm also going to choose construction. Construction lines, we'll dive more into what they mean later, but basically they do not show up when you're trying to do a feature, so they don't get in the way. So I'm going to choose this line and make it coincident to this point, so that now that that line is in line with it, I don't have to worry about it shifting to the right. This part will, but not this line that you see is turned black. In the same vein, I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and this one I'm actually going to be controlling the line more or less. Once we have dimensions in, I don't want this line to be the only thing that's not defined. And I'll show the importance of the center line in just a second. Let's go ahead and give this profile a shape. I gave it a 1 value and it scaled gigantic. We'll do the same here. Alright, so the first one we have is this. So when I click this line and this line, instead of getting this half value like you would have expected, we got a diameter value. But that's what we need here. So it's actually pretty perfect. So we can go ahead and slap in the diameter values that we need. And the hole is given here, so this one's 4. And then we have a width of 5. Okay, so now that we have that, we can choose revolve, and what's cool is like automatically it chooses the profile, it chooses the axis, so you don't have to do anything, you just hit OK, and just like that you've got everything with these 4 holes. So it's actually not as daunting as it looks. But this portion, I think, is crucial. So, of course, you can draw circles and you can say, you know, that they're this far away and all this stuff. But the only way to actually map out these circles properly, and this is like a cardinal rule for everything you do, so please pay much attention. You should always, 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 always. I'm going to show you an example first if the circle wasn't on center. But you should always have a way to locate the circle along an axis. So say it was in the middle. What I would do is take this point, constrain it to there, and I'll take that same point, constrain it to the circle. So now if I change this to, you know, whatever position, it moves. And I could go and do the same with other circles, but I'm just going to pattern it. But for now, we're going to just take this circle and constrain it to this line. And I'm going to trim this line because it's just a construction line. It's just so that you can get a position. So now we can take that center circle value of 12, slap it in, and the circle size itself is 2. And that's it. It's fully constrained just with this one circle, one vertical line, and that. And this is ideal. You always want this. Now I could keep going and drawing all of those, but I'm not because there's a much better trick. Just go ahead and hit cut through all. And then because this is its own feature, a lesser known thing at this point for y'all, is you can actually edit these features individually. So I could suppress this and it would cease to exist, but then I can unsuppress it and it comes right back. But one of the more powerful things is the circular pattern tool. This is a feature, circular pattern. So I can choose either by clicking here or by clicking here in the browser bar, the feature. Then I can choose an axis, and then I can either go in and expand and choose an axis through here, or I can just click the round part of the feature. And if you notice, it's starting to show these little previews. So I can put in 4, and that's how many we have. And then I could change the angle if we wanted, but we want it to go in a full circle. So I can actually just go ahead and hit OK. And there we have it. And if you want to confirm it looks right in the middle, choose View, and then half section view, and choose the YZ plane, and then hit the check mark. So when I hit the side view, you can actually look and see, oh, it looks just like this one. Cool. And then to end that view, just hit end section view from that same area in the view tab. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching, everybody.